Hey, everybody, this is Derry Titan on the Film Mechanics Screenwriting podcast. And today's guest is none other than the most talented Kimberly Jones with me today. And she is the epitome of what unapologetic looks like, what when a grandmother dreams a dream, and when a mother wakes up and pray a prayer, and a father gives all the jewels away. She is this person. Tell us who you are, Kimberly. Tell us.
You're doing it all the justice. So my name is Kimberly Latrice Jones. I'm one of Derry's mentees. I'm one of his students. I'm one of his annoying kids because he just collect kids everywhere he goes. I know India be like,
My goodness.
little old man that lived in the shoe. All these damn kids you keep collecting.
All the time. I got somebody, look, somebody just hit me up just a second ago, like, hey, can I talk to you about like it happened. But you know what? Just tell us who you are, Kim, before we get into that. Cause I want people to know who you are for real, for real.
Um, my name is Kimberly Latrice Jones. I am a three times New York Times bestselling author. And I have, I always say I have 3.5 books in the world because I have two young adult novels that I co-authored with my friend Geely Siegel. I'm Not Dying With You Tonight and While We Fly. And then I have one adult nonfiction book that I wrote called How We Can Win Race History and Change in the Money Game That's Rigged, which is basically my manifesto for reparations. And then I have the point five. Well, I always say I have point five book, 3.5 books in the world. The point five is that Geely and I have a short story that we wrote together in an anthology called Game On with 13 other authors. And so that's been my primary bread and butter as a writer, is being a novelist and writing books. But I've written op-eds for tons of major magazines, for Time, for Marie Claire, for ID, for Essence. I've written for different newspapers, for the AJC, for I've written op-eds for a lot of people. And then um, as a screenwriter, which was my original ambition. Like, that's when I was growing up, that's what I wanted to be. I went to high school at the Chicago Academy for the Arts. And I studied theater there, but I knew even then that I really wanted to be a writer, but they didn't have a writing program then. They have a writing program now. So the closest I could get to that was being a theater major. And then I went to Columbia College in Chicago and studied a film with a concentration in producing and writing. And I've spent my whole life chasing screenwriting, and then my success has been in being a novelist. So that is why I like ride on Derry's coattails all the time, coming to all his classes and doing all of that, because that's always been my ambition, is to be a screenwriter. And I do I do have a trap series that I wrote called The Trap House, that is on Tubi, and it trended really well on Tubi and got millions of views. It was a limited series that we produced independently that just had some success on Tubi. And then for a little while, for 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, I had an overall TV deal with Warner Brothers Television, which, as a Black woman having an overall deal, that's a big deal, because one, they don't give those deals out too frequently anymore, and it definitely ain't a whole lot of us getting them. So what that did, even though no real fruit came from it, in the sense that I never had anything um, that made it to air, it's also because I was there during a really like interesting time, a tumultuous time in the industry, where the industry was shifting and confused what to do about because of streaming. And then in the middle of that, Discovery purchased Warner, and so there was a lot of upheaval with that. Also, in the midst of that, my mother passed away and my brother passed away within months of each other. So there were moments when I was in my deal where I probably wasn't really mentally on my A game. And so it just wasn't the right time or the right situation for me. The people at Warner were very kind, very gracious. And what I will say is, the one thing I appreciate about my time at Warner is that it was school. Like, it's the best TV school I could have ever gone to, because as much as I thought I knew about the business, I realized during that deal how little I knew about the business. Like how little I knew about the business.
Listen, is one thing when you're dealing with a few $1,000s, but when you're dealing with somebody who has billions of dollars and how they done and how they're
Yeah,
like telling you how it's done. They're telling you how
yeah.
it's done.
Like how it's done for real.
Right, right,
And it's
right,
like
right.
not a TV series, like how it's done for real. So I'm so grateful for that, because I learned Hollywood. Like that 2 years, like pitching, trying to develop shows and trying to get stuff off the ground and having to talk to buyers and having to interact with executives. And like I talked to everybody all the way. My direct executive was Misty, who I'm always gonna love. Misty, shout out Misty, Black woman, FAMU grad. She was part of that original team that started with Rainforest with her and Rob and Will Packard, and now she is the president of TV over at Warner Brothers TV. She was, so they had a lot of hopes for me. They didn't give me like a junior executive. They gave me Mitzi Miller, who is the president of drama over at Warner, and so. I also think she held my hand through the process a lot, because she was like, I'm a sister, you a sister. I'm gonna make sure you understand what's happening. I had some hiccups, some things I did wrong that like was great learning lessons. I learned how you really get a show on the air. I learned how you really pitch shows. I learned how you really package shows. I learned how much stuff me and all my indie friends been doing wrong over the years and trying to sell. Like when I tell you it was like the coldest boot camp I could have ever gone through, it was. And then out of that, I made great relationships with other producers and production companies, people who wanted to work with me, people who the studio connected to me. And I can't really talk about it in great detail, but I have a situation going on right now with a really big production company with a really big showrunner. And that came from relationships that I built over at Warner. And so I have a show that's looking really good to potentially be on the air next year. And it's because of the things that I learned at Warner and the relationships that I built over there. So I'm always going to be grateful for that.
And so in talking about relationships, in this business, because in the entertainment business, and I try to, with this podcast, I try to give as much information as I possibly can from different perspectives. So it'll help the next generation or the next writer who's trying to sound off, who's trying to find a way, how do you make that connection? So that's my question. How do you make that connection to Miss Miller?
Yeah, so the thing is like this is the oldest trick in the book, and I know me and you, Derry, we both hip hop heads, so we come from that era. Like originally, all of us were trying to make it in music, right? Because I used to be a rapper back in the '90s,
Me
so I was gypsy LaRue, you know what I'm saying? So, uh,
I was accurate. I was smooth love. I mean, I have a couple different names, but I mean, I was rapping my tail off though.
I think a lot of us rappers became writers, right? Like this is the transition. But one of the things that's always been true in just the entertainment field across the board is do something that makes them come to you. Like have a moment, have a piece of art, keep working, put yourself out there, throw all the spaghetti against the wall and see who sticks. And so you can pursue them, but it's totally different when they come looking for you, when you do something that makes them be like, hey, who's that? Who's that person over there? And so what happened is, in 2020, I gave a speech in the middle of the George Floyd protest that went like crazy, stupid, viral, and in people, getting that speech passed around. I heard, as well, I didn't hear. I'm not guessing. I saw it on she was on an interview and she was talking about it. One of the leaders and making sure that everyone saw that speech from me was Avery DuVernay. Avery DuVernay was just texting everybody this video of me that was going viral. Like, have you seen this girl? Have you seen this girl? Have you seen this girl? And one of the people that she texted to was the at the time the president. He's no longer there, but at the time the president of Warner Brothers, and because that's where her deal is. And she sent this to him, and he's like, who is this? And she's like, I don't know that much about her, but I saw this speech and I'm sending it to everybody. Like, I feel like everybody needs to see this. And so he went down a rabbit hole of looking up who I was and realized I was a writer. He was like, oh, she's a book on the New York Times bestseller list. She has other books coming out. She went to film school. Like, okay. And so my manager got a phone call from the president of Warner Brothers saying, we would like to get on a call with Kimberly Jones.
Mm.
I mean,
So
and I had never written anything on TV, but I had worked in development on several things in TV. So if you went to my IMDb, you could see shows that I had worked in development on. Like I worked in development. I was a development assistant on Being Bobby Brown, the Bobby and Whitney reality show. I had been Tyler Perry's production secretary. I had been an assistant on the desk of Jesse Berdinka, who was a Miramax executive. And when I was on Jesse's desk, he developed movies like Paid in Full. And so they knew that I understood the development process, and they're like, if she writes and she understands the development process, and of course that was at the time when everybody was trying to pretend like they was woke and give Black creators an opportunity and all that. So I really made sense at the time. Like, not the revolutionary girl is also a writer. Like, if we
yeah.
gonna grab Black creators, shit, grab her first.
How did you sign the paperwork, like in terms of managers, lawyers? Talk about that experience for anybody who may not know how that goes.
Yeah, so the first thing that happened is a call. Deals are structured different ways, and okay, and so let me quickly explain. What I have was called an overall deal, and let me. I know you know, but explain to the viewers what an overall deal means. At a studio, when you're at a studio, if you have a deal at Lionsgate or Warner Brothers or Universal or Viacom, whatever the case may be, normally you get a deal for a specific type of thing that you do. So like if you're a stand-up comedian, you get a comedy deal, which means you could talk to the people in the comedy department. They are communicating with you, you are pitching them ideas, you have a relationship with the comedy department. If you are, let's say, and I don't think this is the deal she had, but I'm just using her as an example. If you're a Shonda Rhimes and what you're known for is writing these really well-known dramas, you may have a drama deal with NBC Universal where you're talking to them constantly. You may be somebody like Issa Rae, who they feel like can do everything, that you can do, you can do TV shows, you can do movies, you can do all these things. So you're going to be connected to the company that covers the umbrella of everything. So like I had a deal with Warner Brothers TV. Issa Rae had a deal with Warner Media. So I always have to correct people when they be like, "Oh, you had a deal with Warner Media." I'm like, "No, no, no, I didn't. I had a deal with Warner Brothers TV." So like somebody like Issa Rae, her deal is with Warner Media, which means she can pitch movies, she can pitch TV shows, and she can pitch TV shows in all genres. She can pitch to anything that Warner Media owns. She can pitch there. Now, what I had to deal was I had to deal with Warner Brothers TV, which means that the people who run features and all that stuff, I was not connected to those people. I was not on those people's radar. I was not a creative that they had to deal with. Only people at Warner Brothers TV. Now, I had an overall TV deal, which means that I was not relegated to comedy. I could talk to comedy, I could talk to drama, I could talk to unscripted, I could talk to, whatever departments exist under the TV banner, I could get a meeting with the head of any of those departments. So if I had a comedy, if I had a drama, if I had a reality show, whatever I had, if it had to be a TV show, I could talk to anybody in the TV department at Warner. A lot of people, like a lot of comedians, will get a comedy deal where they only talking to comedy, or you get somebody like maybe like a Kim K who gets an unscripted deal and she's only talking to unscripted. So I had a deal with Warner Brothers TV overall, which means my first meeting when they found me and they were interested in me, I did what's called a general meeting, which is that I got on a call with the head of Warner and the head of every single one of those departments, the head of comedy, the head of drama, the head of unscripted, the head of animation, the head of every department, and then their second hand. All these people were on the call. And I basically had to sell myself to all these people. So I had a roster of things, something for each department. This is what I want to do in animation. This is what I want to do in unscripted. This is what I want to do in drama. This is what I want to do in comedy. And I pitched snippets of shows for each department and talked about what I wanted my production company to look like and what my overall brand was and what style of writer I was to all of them at once. So I had to please a Zoom call full of people.
Mm.
And so sometimes they come in knowing they already gonna sign you and they just letting you do your little dog and pony show for the pomp and circumstance of it. Sometimes you really are pitching because they're gonna get off the call and then go back and have a meeting and decide if you're interested. At the end of my call, the president looks at me when I finished talking and laughing and joking with everybody. The president of Warner looks at me and said, "Welcome to Warner Brothers." It was done. The contract was in my attorney's inbox the next morning. They already knew they wanted to sign me. They just had to go through it. And this is a way too for him, right, to let the departments know, look at what I just got you.
So you sign the contract, and after the contract is
The
signed,
signing the contract was a 2 month long process
mm,
because your lawyer is going back and forth with their lawyer for quite some time before they both come to an agreement on what that contract is going to look like. So it took them like 6 to 8 weeks to negotiate, going back and forth, the attorneys, and she would communicate with me and talk to me about what I'm willing to give up, what I really want, that kind of thing. And then I got my short form contract, which is just like your basic like signature page that's like, all right, here's the highlights and the deal points. And we signed that. And then after that, they start preparing your long form agreement that's like 20 pages. And then like a week or two later, then I signed my long form agreement. And then after that, I was sent all the contact information for the head of every department so I could start setting meetings with them.
ooh, see, and that's the kind of information a lot of times that a lot of writers want to. They think that if all they got to do is give somebody over at Warner Brothers or at a studio their script, and they're gonna go out and they're gonna find the money and they just gonna make it. Never
No.
mind the fact of the negotiating part because they feel like, I got $1 million script and it's gonna make $1 million. What was the biggest takeaways from that experience?
One of the biggest takeaways that I took away from that is I learned how to put together a proper pitch. I learned what the pitch process is,
What
what
is
it
the proper
really,
pitch? Not to cut you off. What
yeah.
what the proper pitch looks like?
So a proper pitch comes in two different forms, right? So one, the pitch deck that we all know, right? So a pitch deck is, but also what goes into a pitch deck is not what people think goes into a pitch deck too. So that's one thing to learn, like what actually goes into a pitch deck. And then the other thing is a very important tool that I learned that most people don't know about is a P.O.P, a pitch on paper. And most people don't make a P.O.P. And that is the selling tool in Hollywood. It's more important than the pitch deck. It's more important than the fucking script. You don't need the other thing I learned is all the people I know, as an indie, we've all done it, been making like proof of concepts to sell shows. That is, you're doing yourself a disservice. They don't even want to see a proof of concept. They actually that turning in a proof of concept without being asked for it is like a sign that you don't know how the business really works. Because in TV, um, first of all, if they want your concept, they're going to order it to pilot themselves and pay for the pilot themselves because when they see the pilot to see if it's something worth buying, they want it done with the caliber of actor, director, and writing that they're accustomed to so they can really see if it's something there. So no shade, but your proof of concept with your grand total budget of $800 and all your homies acting in it, untrained actors or minimally trained actors in it, like all of us are still human. And I know that, creative and executives have an eye and a way to see, diamonds in the rough, but it's really hard to look at like a really, you know,
Yeah.
poor piece of
Uh,
content
uh,
and
you're saying looking at an underdeveloped script, the underdeveloped, project, and being able to for someone to see the magic in it, is real. It can
Yeah.
be really hard to see that, because you're
Yeah.
saying, you're standing from a standpoint of, if you're an executive, you're standing from a standpoint, how do I spend 20 million? How do I justify spending $20 million, for a season of something that I think might do well, and
Right.
nobody I know worked on that actual project, and to convince, if it's on TV, to convince the advertising giants, the corporations, that this one will fly. So
Yeah.
that's a really good way to look at it. So the PO.
Yeah. So it's like, don't do that. Like, just write a really strong pitch deck. Have a phenomenal pitch on paper. Have a pitch on paper that is, pay somebody like Derry the $1,000 to $2,000 to like actually give you feedback on it and a critique on it, and to do like a real breakdown on it and do a real script analysis on it, and to help you fix it and get it where it needs to be, and then have that pitch on paper. And so I can send you a sample of the Warner Brothers pitch on paper, because they have a very specific structure as to how they like it to be.
Yeah.
Just so you have it for your arsenal, and maybe you could share with people after this. But yeah, it's very similar to a pitch on paper is very, very similar to a show Bible. It's very similar to a show Bible. It has a lot of the same elements in it. So if a person doesn't know how to do a POP, or they're like, what is that? Then I will replace that by saying putting together a solid show Bible. You know what I mean? That is what they want to see. They want to see what the tone is. They want to see what the character development is. They want to see what is this going to look like over 3 seasons? What is going to be the season arc for season 1? What are the episode ideas for season 1? How many episodes do you think this is? Do you think this is for broadcast? Do you think this is for cable? Do you think this is for a streamer? Why are you got to open it up with a strong overview on why now, why this project, and why you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is what they actually want to see to buy the show, because their thing is, if I can see it through this, if I can see it on your pitch on paper and I'm buying it and I'm like, yeah, I really want to do this, they have the money and the tools to go get the people that can make it happen.
Right. Right.
They just want to see a solid story, a solid pitch of something they know they can sell. If you got a cold ass procedural, people love procedurals. Procedurals stay on for 10, 20 seasons. If you got a strong ass, cold ass procedural, they want to see that in your pitch, and they like, don't worry about who's gonna be the showrunner and the director and the lead. That's what we do. We'll help you figure that part out. Is the procedural tight? Is it something I'm gonna get 10 seasons out of? Am I gonna be able to sell Tide on this motherfucker?
Right. So you was talking about, that's wild. You was talking about your some of the takeaways, and that's one of them, learning how to
Yeah,
pitch.
I'm like, stop making proof of concepts.
Yeah.
Stop writing whole pilots.
Yeah.
Baby, get you a strong pitch deck
Yeah.
and a strong POP. If you don't know how to do a POP, a strong show Bible. And that is literally all they want from you to buy. That's all they
So,
want from you, because they're going to pay for the pilot.
so let's talk about another deal that you got
Mm-hmm.
for the book.
Yeah. So my most popular book, I'm Not Dying With You Tonight,
That's
the steps that went with that was Autumn Bailey and Michael Napalia. Autumn Bailey for Prominent Pictures, which is Autumn's company um, that she has with a friend of hers, Cameron Barnett, who is the son of Mark Burnett, the legendary producer Mark
they,
Burnett.
they optioned the book from you.
Yes. So Cameron and Autumn were interested in optioning the book, and they needed kind of like a bigger they needed a partner on it because of some things that had to be done with it. They needed a partner on it. And so at the time, and this is why I say y'all be worried about Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok and all of that. I'm gonna tell you where you need to be is a 24/7, where you need to be nurturing your content, where you need to be DMing folks, where you need to be living your best life if you want to make it in this industry. LinkedIn. LinkedIn. So I was going through my DMs on LinkedIn, and Michael Napolia had slid into my DM on my LinkedIn. And then when I went to his LinkedIn and looked him up, I realized that he was one of the heads of Radar Pictures. Radar Pictures, I ain't even gonna name their whole catalog. I'm gonna just tell you one of their most recent projects that they did, and that'll get you to understand the level at which Radar is working. Radar Pictures is responsible for the latest Jumanjis, the ones with Kevin Hart and The Rock.
Oh, that's all. Oh, that big time. That big
Yeah.
time right there. Big time right there.
So Michael from Radar was in my DM saying that he had read I'm Not Dying With You Tonight and he wanted to option it. And I said, well, I have this company Prominent who's already interested in optioning it, and I'm trying to work, things out with them, but there's some hiccups in the road with getting them the option. Would you be willing to partner with them? And he said yes. And so I got him on a call with Autumn and Cameron, and they worked it out. And so Radar and Prominent came together and gave me and Geely a little money to option the book. And it just at the time in which we were doing this was at the same time I was negotiating my Warner deal. So all of this was happening like I did the option with Radar and Prominent, and then like 30 days later I got my deal with Warner.
Mm.
And so I went through that 2 month negotiation process. So it was like 3 months into me having the option, and they were working their moves, and they were already semi having a conversation with Warner through a relationship that Autumn had with an executive that was there at the time. And just so y'all know, executives change jobs like musical chairs. So yeah, that's the other thing. You might have to get an executive that love you, and then they like, and I'm over at AMC now. Oh, I'm over at BET now. I'm down at Universal now. Like, look, can I go with you over there? Now I'm stuck over here and you done left me. But Autumn had this connection over there. And so then by me getting a deal, it kind of was just kismet. It all just worked out. And then Warner came in and not only optioned I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, but also our second book, While We Fly, for the TV department. And so we spent literally 4 years developing I'm Not Dying With You Tonight with Warner and the two production companies for TV. And then finally, after 4 years in development, it just didn't seem like the right fit and the right relationship and the right time. We all kind of just finally just conceded that, like, okay, this has been going on for 4 years. It's dead.
Yeah. And the reason why, and I thank you, Kim. I thank you for being vulnerable. I thank you for being open. And I thank you for sharing your experiences more than anything. Because the reason I'm asking you these are tough questions, because my next question is, how do you deal with having these monumental moments in your life, and then they kind of fizzle?
My grandmother, who was a very strong woman, my grandmother was my grandma, man, that might be my grandma might be my next book. Uh, she was so tenacious, and I saw her reinvent herself so many times in my lifetime. And I was very young when my grandmother died. I was 19 when my grandmother died. But even in those 19 years that I experienced her, I heard the stories about all the times she had reinvented herself, and then I got to witness several times in which she reinvented herself. And her famous saying was, "Nothing beats a fail but a try." She used to say that all the time, nothing beat a fails but a try. And even my mother, I watched my mother make multiple career changes throughout my lifetime. It's funny because we were talking offline and you were saying how your mother had a corporate job, but she also had a bartending job. Well, my mother worked her corporate job at Sears, and then my mother waited tables at the Playboy Club. You know what I'm saying? So, I watched this woman, this very sophisticated, very, very cutesy, very demure woman, do what needs to be done. My mother worked in real estate for a little while. My mother was the director of My mother was the director of a foster care agency for a long time. She actually helped the comedian Adele Givens get custody of her nieces and nephews through the foster care agency that my mother worked at. And my mother was a director of an after school program. My mother helped to create a really amazing after school program through Chicago Public Schools called From Cradle to Classroom, where they would take high school girls who would get pregnant and assign them a mentor program and services until their child was in kindergarten, and then towards the end of my mother's life, she became a minister. So I watched the women. Same thing with my mom's sister, my Aunt Bessie. I watched my Aunt Bessie work downtown Chicago at a bank and then eventually become a school bus driver. And, she owned a boutique for a little while. And so all the women in my family, I watched them in terms of their career track. I know they had dark nights and stuff like that, but the way it looked to me as a young woman watching them, it was like they would be like, okay, this ain't working no more. Cool. I'm doing this now. This is what I'm doing now. All right, this ain't working no more. Cool. We over here now. We outside. We selling water bottles. I grew up around male and female hustlers. My uncles, same way. My uncles own Five and Dimes, they own cab stands, they own Jiffy Cabs, they own corner stores, they own juke joints, all over the west side and the south side of Chicago. So I grew up around people who just like, if something ain't working, you like, fuck it, let me do something else.
Kim, as always, it is such a pleasure talking to you. I want to thank you for coming out to the Film Mechanics Screenwriting Podcast. It's been 2 years since I've been trying to get you on the show. You finally slide. You finally showed some. Derry, what's up? Let me get on that podcast.
I got my feelings because your other kids been on him.
Woo, we been having a good time too, boy. We having a great time on this joint. So yeah, let me thank you for real, Kim. I really do thank you. Thank everyone for coming out to the Film Mechanics Screenwriting Podcast. I look forward to you talking to you soon. All right, peace.